It is Wednesday, and that means it is Ask a Flower Farmer. And super happy to be here with you guys today. And it's a beautiful day here in Virginia. We are, let's see, what are we? We're cool, we're a little drizzly, and it's like perfect cool flower weather for sure. So the nights are still in the high 40s with the days not really getting hot. So this is one of those years that it would have definitely paid off to have succession planted some of the cool flowers that sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. This is one of those years I'd be kicking myself for not having done that. So what this half an hour is all about is me trying to answer as many of your questions as I can during this time. And if you would like to post a question about cool flowers, seed starting, flower farming, just anything to do with the grow and cut flowers, just post it in the little bubble down below with your question mark in the middle of it. And that way I won't miss your question by having to scroll through everybody's names, right? And so this has really been a great cool flower year. Not so hot for a couple, but that's the way it always is, friends. It can't be good for everybody because everybody has different needs, right? I mean, in general, they're very similar, but it always works out that the actual conditions themselves are really conducive to some stuff and other stuff, not so much. Like I will tell you this. So Suzanne and I just got here at the fulfillment center from the farm, and we were doing almost the next to last photo shoot for my new book, which will be out in February of 2024. We'll be revealing all that here coming up shortly. But anyway, cool flowers are there's so many beautiful cool flowers right now. And I have grown the tallest nigella I have ever grown in my history. And I'm growing 7 different varieties and colors. And they're all super tall. So apparently, whatever they got this year made them happier than any other year. And I say this to say, and this is true even in business, so often we're all looking for something that we're missing, but it's oftentimes some simple little thing that whatever it is just needs to like ramp itself up, right, and be super successful. So the nigella, I just couldn't stop. I mean, it's like tops of my thighs high. I just couldn't stop standing next to it like, can't we take a picture here too? Again and again, because it was just so totally awesome. And, I think nigella is one of those flowers that people underuse. It's kind of a flash crop for us. It doesn't do a lot of rebloom in here. It doesn't have enough time after we cut that central stem to actually regrow or to grow some stems, side shoots that would actually be really useful and long enough. Maybe this year that will change, right? But it's just been a super great cool flower year, even though here in Virginia, we had that polar Arctic blast that I think many in the United States actually had. We were down to 11 degrees for several days in December, which we are kind of used to that maybe for a few days in January, February, but not for as long as we had it. It was like just 2 or 3 weeks of just really cold weather. And so it wasn't so kind to a couple cool flowers, but it was super kind to some of the others. So what do I want to tell you? So first off, if you want to see my cool flowers that are blooming, that's what our show on Fridays is all about. You get my app, download the Gardener's Workshop Live Shop. It's in your phone's app store. Download it and join me at 12 noon Eastern Time on Fridays. And that show really began last year so I could show you live from the farm all of the harvest that I did on Thursday. It's like the day after, right? And that was hugely successful. And we offer some special offers over on the phone app. Like, for instance, we give you free seed shipping. We want you to be able, when you see those flowers, to say, oh my gosh, I've never grown that. I want to get that seed. And if you watch us every Friday, we don't want you to feel like I can't buy seeds this week because I don't want to pay shipping again. So the seed only orders shipping is on us, so it's free to you if you just buy seeds. And I will tell you, we have got some gorgeous stuff blooming right now. So join me in the app if you want to do that. And then also, in case you're not in the know, if you're not on our newsletter list, we are having an open farm June 24th. We already have people flying in from all over the country, which y'all is just so humbling for me, for people to come to my little urban farm. So mark that if that's something that you want to do. And so remember, you can post your questions down below in the little bubble. So let's see, we've got a question down there. Let's see. Bloomin' Flower Garden. Hi, Lisa. I have reseeded chocolate lace flowers coming up. If I leave it, will it succumb to disease since it won't be crop rotated? I am not familiar with what chocolate lace flower really is, actually, so I'm sorry about that. But, as far as rotating and moving plants through your space from time to time, I think a plant... following a planting of it last year without disease and pest issues is perfectly okay to have it again. For instance, we don't like to do it, but especially when we were in high production, we were always so tight on space. Sometimes we would do sunflowers two times in a row in the same spot, but that was always assuming that I didn't have a disease problem with the first crop or a pest issue. So I think doing it once is kind of okay. But I'm not familiar with what variety, what plant that is. But I think you're probably okay for the first time. And just see how it goes. And again, if you have another pristine year with it, then you're probably okay, especially if it's a reseeder. You just kind of take them where they come, right? So what should the night temperature be? Get up to in order to plant out dahlia tubers? Well, I am not a dahlia grower anymore. I mean, I grew dahlias for several years, and typically I actually didn't grow tubers. I bought plugs because I grew Karma dahlias, which is the cut flower, a hybridized line of dahlias that were for cut flower growers. They were kind of small dahlias. They had a longer vase life. And we typically would not plant them, or on the occasion that I did plant tubers, we would wait until after the last frost. And once the nighttime temperatures were hitting what the warm season tender annuals want. So for instance, we're looking for 60-degree nights and on 2-week forecast. And in fact, this coming Thursday is the first 60-degree night. I think it's Thursday or Friday. The first 60-degree night that we'll be moving forward. That means the row covers can come up after that. And anyway, that's a whole other story. But dahlias fall into that category. And I will say to you, if you don't already follow Daniel at Petal Pickers, Daniel's in South Carolina. And sometimes you learn the best lessons from things that you think is a really big problem. So I remember like 3 years ago, Daniel saying how his business is so grown so much that they just didn't get to planting their dahlias on what he thought was the perfect time, right? Which is, right about now. Everybody's rushing to get them in, right? Well, there's really no reason to rush to get them in, especially if you're in the South, because we know that during summer, the pest pressure on dahlias makes most of the blooms not even usable. You just want to get them up and growing and being ready to put on the show in late summer and all through fall, right? So I'm just saying this to you to say you don't really have to rush to get them in the ground unless, of course, you have a really short growing season. So Daniel actually learned that planting later really prevented a lot of problems for them. And I would guess he's in zone 8B. I am in zone 7B/8A, and we would plant our dahlia tubers out probably about mid-May, because what happens is you don't want those tubers to grow in the ground, get in the ground, and then to be cold. And then especially if it rains a lot, because that will predispose them to rotting. So that was just my experience with that. So Let's see. Fleetwood Botanical. If I grow group 3 and 4 snaps for warm season, will I still be able to achieve thick stems? Well, so what she's talking about, if you're not familiar, is that snapdragons, oftentimes in catalogs, you'll sometimes see group 1, group 2, group 3, and group 4. Group 3 and 4 are those that bloom during long days, and they'll tolerate some heat, meaning you can, plant them and they'll still bloom in midsummer. And so your question about will I achieve thick stems, I don't, unless you live in a super low humidity, not so blasting hot like we are. I mean, we're in the South. Our summer days, late June and July, we can go above 95, no problem at all, right? What we find with later, I can definitely grow group 3 and 4 and have them bloom later in the summer. There's no question about that. But the problems are that they fall victim to disease and pests because that's what's really active at those times of the year, right? So thrips, of course, become a big problem. But rust is also a problem later in the year. So when plants are not necessarily grown in their really happy environment, not just tolerating it, oftentimes they'll fall victim to those. So I would say, it would depend on where you are, but I would say don't count on those thick, rocking stems that we get when we fall plant or very early spring plant on snaps. As it heats up, they just have more issues. They have more struggles to overcome, and it just takes up their time, right? So, give that a whirl. All right. Is there a way to speed up bloom time for peonies? Sandy, that would be the $1 million question. Dave Dowling, I know, talks about in his course, I believe. Pretty sure he does. Dave does flower farming, school bulbs, perennials, woodies, and more. And his course is coming out in June. And I'm telling y'all, ranunculus, tulips, peonies, dahlias. Dave is a walking encyclopedia. You want to be connected to him for the rest of his career and your career. And the way you do that is through taking his course, because then you get into his private Facebook group. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that he talks about how they do something to the peonies to make some of them come earlier or to prolong the other ones. I'm not sure. So I've never done anything I've never manipulated my peonies. I just take them when they come, and they are gorgeous this year. So I am sorry, Sandy, to say that I can't give you a definitive answer on that. Hey, Hill House, can you share how you store sunnies in the cooler? How long? So we, in fact, didn't ever really need to store sunflowers in the cooler because we moved them. And I want to say this here now because I saw a post somewhere last week that I thought I just need to have a minute to go in and sit down and answer this. I want to say that a cooler is a wonderful, I have a cooler. I did not have a walk-in cooler for the first 10 years, I would say. And so I learned to grow and build my business without a cooler. And there's a lot of ways to do that. But a big part of that is you need to have outlets for your flowers more than once a week, because that's what makes you cut at the proper time, maybe. And then you want to throw it in the cooler and hold it, which is definitely doable. But we wanted the least amount of handling, the least amount of issues with the maximum amount of vase life. So we harvest twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays. Our flowers, the first of the week sunnies were gone on Tuesday for our commercial customers, and the end of the week sunnies would be gone to our subscriptions and to our members only market. So we didn't have to really sit on flowers. I will say the problems that I see with putting sunnies in the cooler is just, and I can't off the top of my head tell you what the humidity is, but you need to be sure the humidity is correct in your cooler, because it really will dry out the petals of sunflowers. So I would definitely look that up. I know that I think it's in the post-harvest book put out by the ASC Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers. Has that post-harvest book that every flower farmer should have, right? Sorry, y'all, I'm really tired. My first camera call was at 6:15 this morning, and then Suzanne and I did a bunch of work before we got here. So that would tell you what the proper humidity is. And you just don't want to sit on them any longer. I mean, 3 or 4 days, I would think would still be, if you harvest them at the proper stage, that would be still have an adequate vase life. So that was always my goal, because y'all, I mean, we sold so many flowers, 10 to 15,000 flowers a week, stems a week in season. And I am looking to eliminate as many steps as possible, meaning instead of cutting them, bringing them in, and then having to put them in a cooler, we leave them sitting because they're getting bunched that afternoon to go for delivery the next day. You see what I mean? I mean, that's a lot of flowers to move into a cooler, out of a cooler. So that was kind of my secret sauce. That's one of the things I talk about so much in flower farming school, y'all. It's like, nothing I do is different than anybody else. I just look at it really, really different and maybe eliminate a lot of the steps and see to the bottom line. And, but that's how I would do if I needed to put them in a cooler. Tonight, the temperature will go down to 40 degrees. Should I double my protection for my early sunflowers? No, and our first sunnies are blooming. So we actually have sunflowers again this year for Mother's Day. They aren't the biggest sunflowers I've ever grown. We saw them this morning on the photo shoot. I didn't cut any of them yet because they're just starting. But I think if they are, 40 degrees will not kill them. If it was going below freezing, I would say double covers, but I think you might be all right. If you have double covers, what does it hurt except that it's more work, right? So let's see what Tori's asking. I have had trouble finding the post-harvest book on the ASCFG website. I know it's for members only area, but where? I will look that up. So it's so funny you said that. When I went in there to look for something the other day, it's not really easy to navigate, and it was not in an obvious place. So it's on one of those drop-down menus. Suzanne, write me a note to please find the book link for Tori. So I will send it to you, Tori. Once you cut sunflowers, when the petal lifts, how long before they will fully open? How long will they last in a vase? So, Amy, first off, I will say that this is so true. If you want them to open quick, they'll open slow. If you want them to open slow, they open quick. It's like it never blooming fails. But, so I like to wait. Depends on the time of the year and our workload. But often, and many times, sunflowers get away from us. I mean, it's like all it takes, and this is true for cool flowers, all it takes is one afternoon of heat to push everything like 4 days, So it really depends on your conditions. But when we cut sunflowers that are just lifting off, if all of them have just been lifted off, they'll be open the next day. But if there's just 1 or 2, you probably have 2 or 3 days. It also depends on what have you got them sitting in. Are they in CVBN and holding solution or flower food? I mean, you can do a lot of things to manipulate them. And sometimes if we wanted them to open fast, we would literally set the buckets in our grow room, which is so much warmer than our building. So all of that matters. And you may find that it might be easier for you to wait a day to cut them, to get them more lifted so they open faster. Last Friday, you had a new Sweet William Super Duplex. How does it differ from Electron, which I have blooming right now? Oh my goodness, Kim, you got to grow them both. So the colors. It's all the pinks that are in there. Now, I question the picture that you saw last week, and I'll be cutting that again tomorrow morning for the show this Friday, Electron and Super Duplex. I think that maybe that one red and white, which when I say red, it was like burgundy red. I think, because they're planted right next to each other, I think that an Electron burgundy got into the Super Duplex, because the Super Duplex, when I see that, all I see is pinks of all colors and bicolors. Suzanne and I first saw Super Duplex back when we were doing photography for Cool Flowers, which would have been 2012. Suzanne and I were in Maryland at a big show. We were at the University of Maryland, actually. I was speaking. We went to Dave Dowling's farm, which he still had then, and took pictures and of some delphiniums that he had growing. Oh my gosh. Then we actually just stumbled upon the super duplex patch. And I just remember the prettiest pinks and reds ever. And so Electron is just different colors. That's why you want to grow them both. But they both are handled the same. They both require vernalization, so you would start them at the same. And Dave Downing loves Electron, and he really loves Super Duplex. And it's taller. It's also taller for us. Gray cut flowers. Planted out plugs, Sweet William, last autumn, but now they are full of weeds and struggling to flower. Yeah, well, that's a problem. So depending on what weeds they are and how you prepped, I mean, it's experiences like this that make us understand why. I mean, I think I've already said this perhaps here recently, is that Bobo and I have come to the conclusion of why we absolutely love and would not grow without Bio 360. We have a no-till area on our farm where we use organic mulches, and there is such a superior weed suppression. And in winter, cool flowers are different. Fall planted cool flowers are different than planting a warm season something in summer. When you plant something right now, typically the vegetation grows and shades out weeds and helps you out compete that stuff. That's not the case with cool flowers fall planted. That little stem just sits there, and that canopy of the bed is exposed to encourage all kinds of weed growth. And that's when we find so much benefit from using the Bio 360 for fall planted and very early spring planted, because there's not a lot of immediate vegetation growth that just kind of squeezes out the weeds. So that's what I would say to you. I mean, I would just kind of take this as a lesson and say, all right, I'm not doing this again. How am I going to prevent it, right? So that's how I take it. And so that's what Bobo and I have decided, that we will not fall plant into mulch again, because to get the same weed suppression using mulch, any kind of mulch, it has to be so deep, it is very easy to smother and kill young seedlings, is the bottom line. And, anyway, so sorry you got full of weeds, but if they're struggling, you've probably lost them. You know what I mean? It's a little late in the game to do something about that. So I just see this. How do you connect with David and Daniel? Dave Dowling is on, Dave's course is at thegardenersworkshop.com. You definitely want to get on his wait list for his course. Registration, we haven't finalized the date that it's going to open, but if you go to his course page at thegardenersworkshop.com, you can get on the wait list. That just means we'll send you an email when it's time, and you won't miss it. Daniel, you can follow here on Instagram, and he posts amazing videos. It's Petal Pickers is his handle here on Instagram. And if you want to know about our open farm and everything else going on, you just need to sign up for our farm news that comes out each week. And you can sign up for that over at thegardenersworkshop.com. Also, it's at the bottom of every page. So that's how you would do that. Pepper pot flowers. Having trouble germinating nigella and scabiosis for my second year. Ones that do germinate push out of the blocks. Blocks are the same moisture as other things done great in blocks. I've been pushing roots back into blocks. Any tips on better germination? Well, first, we direct seed nigella. So I have never started it in soil blocks. And scabiosis, we do start in blocks. We put the pointy end of the seed down into the small blocker, and it does okay. So I don't know if maybe you need to make better contact. And see, scabiosis makes it even more complicated because the seed actually comes in a couple of different forms. Some of them have the little seed cage around it, and some don't, and we never know how they're going to come to us. And I don't remember off the top of my head either, does it get covered with soil or not? And nigella. Y'all, I mean, I literally carry the Cool Flowers book out into the garden with me. And I just want to also mention that, I don't remember everything. You have got to get your reference tools and use them. I had a visit on a flower farm yesterday. I went to pick up some sweet peas for pictures for the book, and second year grower. And in talking to her, and her farm was just such a second year. It was just so very, very awesome. Anyway, I just realized how so many struggles that we actually have the information. We just forget to go look. We rely on our memory. And friends, you can't do that. I don't do that. I'm 25 years in. I still don't remember, does Nigella get covered with soil or not? And does scabiosis? Because why memorize anything you can quickly look up? And because it makes night and day difference in how your plants perform. So there was a plant yesterday on her farm that wasn't very tall at all. And I said, oh, wow, well, we direct seed that. And she had soil blocked it. And it's like, that's just such key little informations, right? And nobody can remember. Nobody does. And you don't need to. That's not the thing to do when you're in business. I do not memorize anything I can look up. And so I don't know what to tell you about that, except that I haven't done Nigella and Scabby. We just push deep into the block, and I hope that gives you some kind of help. Any recommendations for cut flowers that prefer a more wet soil? We do not flood, but the water table is so high that the ground is easily saturated. Trying to find alternative options to having raised beds. I do not. I cannot. I mean, plants, I'm not familiar with swamp-like plants. You know what I mean? Stuff that grows in marshes and all that kind of stuff. Because so far, don't have that type of condition. I'm sure there's probably something that would grow in those conditions that might be a good cut flower. Will it be conducive to, really be for a cut flower business? Probably not. Plants need excellent drainage because roots need as much oxygen as they do water. And that's why we talk about with soil blocks. It's like you can't let water sit in there. The water needs to saturate the soil, and then it needs to go away, drain away, and evaporate, let it get dry, and then it gets water again. It's the same thing out in the garden. Oh, let me tell you, there are so many soil-borne diseases that thrive in those kinds of conditions that are not good. So I would say you need to start building raised beds. I mean, we build raised beds without sides. It is no cost. It just takes a shovel and product to get it built up and then to keep them. And you will find that you'll have the best growing ever. All right, y'all, let's see if there's one more question here. All right, this is a good one. I just did this yesterday. Well, I started to. Do you pinch your straw flowers? So I have learned that straw flowers rock pinched, as so many branching annuals do. So people are always like, which ones do you pinch? Here's the bottom line, y'all. If it is a branching annual, meaning it's not a single stem like some of the coxcombs and single stem sunflowers, you would obviously not pinch those. But anything that grows side shoots and branches, we pinch. But my pinching policy and rule is that I pinch 50% of a crop. Because why? Because I want the best of both worlds. I want to not pinch because that means that central stem blooms earlier. You get the earliest blooms. And the pinched ones, you get the earliest branching. You get 2 to 3 times the number of stems when you pinch. It's simple math. You can grow half as much, pinch, and get the same volume as if you'd have grown twice as many stems, right, or plants. So we pinch, and straw flowers do beautifully. I actually yesterday pinched, for our photos this morning, I pinched marigolds. Oh my gosh, they were so beautiful. It was a full bed of marigolds that were planted probably 2 to 3 weeks ago, super well established. So here's the thing. I either pinch in the trays for soil blocks and allow them 7 to 10 days to recover before we plant them, or we plant them and allow them 7 to 10 days to recover from being planted before I pinch. Pinching and planting are 2 stressful activities. don't do them at the same time. You're just like stacking the cards against your plants, right? So friends, I want to just mention that if you haven't signed up for our farm news, you need to, because you may not know this, but Flower Farming School Online, the basics, annual crops, marketing, and more, my course is now available on demand. What does that mean? That means you do not have to wait till November. You can actually purchase it anytime. And we still offer the private community where you can tag me and ask a question. If your question is not answered in the over 2,500 questions, frequently asked questions that are already in there from students that are keyword cataloged, so you can keyword search to find them. So I will tell you, I'm going to be doing a lot. Don't know what I'm going to be doing, but we need to talk more about a lot of the struggles that I see people struggling with is just basic foundation flower farming information. And that's what my course is packed with. It's like where the rubber meets the road. Not only the things you need to do, but friends, the things you do not need to do. And wasting so much of your precious time. Let me tell you something. Time is the most valuable thing that we own. And people spend days doing unnecessary tasks. If it doesn't affect the bottom line, then we don't do it, right? And so, friends, I will see you, I hope, on Friday, is it 12 noon, sister? It is 12 noon. I get my lives confused. 12 noon Eastern time inside our phone app. Find it over at your phone app store, Gardener's Workshop Live Shop. Join me to see a killer cool flower harvest this week. The larkspur is beautiful. Oh my goodness. And I hope there's more Nigella. The Nigella is just amazing this year, y'all. And so many other, and snaps galore. So join me on Friday. See you there. And don't forget, I do seed starting Saturdays, 11 a.m. Eastern time on Saturdays on YouTube. So friends, until we meet again, ciao.